Felicitation. Thank you so much. I feel privileged to be this part of Kerala. I've never been to this part of Kerala, the northern tip of Kerala. So it gives me a lot of immense pleasure and joy to be coming to a state that I deeply admire. Um, sure, sir. What we do over this course of another 2 to 3 hours is to since all of you are already PhD students and also most of you are from the area of social sciences, what I'll try to do is that I'll try to tell you a story. The story goes like this: the way we tell stories, right? And you would notice that as I give you examples, as I take you on a ride of how we do data journalism, you realize the method is almost as similar as how you do social sciences, right? So since many of you finish your PhD, writing your PhD. You're doing your PhD. So all of you must have come up with hypothesis, right? That's the first step of doing your PhD. Telling a story also has the same methodology. You come up with a hypothesis, try to test that hypothesis, try to test the hypothesis using data, write the story, come up with visualization and conclusion. So that's the methodology that we'll look. Okay. So instead of jumping right into the methodology and this thing, I wanted to tell a story. I tell the story of how we do journalism by giving an example, right? So this is a story that we did in June 2025. As you know, can anyone is from here from Chennai? Okay. So what are the 3 seasons in Chennai, ma'am? Seasons? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, I completely disagree. In my opinion, there are just 3 seasons in Chennai that are hot, hotter and hottest, right? Okay, so this story was done during the hottest period, or rather hotter periods, right? So what we did was, we wanted to know how heat affects different people in the same city differently, right? And if you have to measure heat, what are the 2 variables that I need to use? Can someone tell me? How do I measure heat? Temperature is one. What else? Temperature is simply not enough. Temperature is just a measure of how hot you are feeling, right? But there is another factor also that makes you feel worse, right? That is humidity, right? So moisture in the air. If you have more moisture in the air and more high temperature, then what will happen is that your body will feel even more hot, because you won't be able to generate it will constantly generating moisture in order to balance for the heat. So heat is always measured as a function of both temperature and humidity, right? Now, the hypothesis is that if you live in the same city, right? But of course, if you are in a middle class, if you have a middle class or upper middle class background, or you work in, let's say, hospitality industry, you will be working in an AC environment, right? So you won't really feel the heat, right? But suppose you are from the working class, right? And you don't have, access to facilities like ACs and so on. Then your exposure to the heat is far higher than that of the middle class or the lower middle class. So what we did was, we took 4 different individuals from the working class section and tried to find out how they are affected by heat on the same day, right? So what did we do? We made an instrument, okay? The instrument is called an Arduino sensor. Does anyone know what is Arduino? Okay. So Arduino is like a microcontroller, a chip, right? So all you have to do is it's like you get the chip and you can add the devices to it, right? Okay. So what we did was, we bought the chip, right? And added a temperature sensor and a humidity sensor, right? We added some switches to it, right? Put it in a casing, and we made 5 instruments like that, and gave each of these instruments to 5 different people. We told them to put it on at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning on 9 June, okay? And keep it on for 24 hours, okay? And what this device would do is, it collect data for every 10 seconds. It will collect the data on humidity and temperature. And we calculated heat stress as a function of humidity and temperature. Okay, let me show. Okay, so we gave this device to 5 people. The first person was a cook who was basically making food for working class people, right? She works in under a thatched, I mean not a thatched but asbestos roof sheet, establishment. Second person was a fisherman. Okay, the fisherman ventures into the sea, fishes and come back. And this was a medium level fisherman in the sense that he didn't have a mechanized boat. It was a simple boat, right, with nets. This is an industrial worker who is making steel pots, right? You know this ever silver pots, right? He works in an establishment which makes these pots. And this person did not want himself to be identified. It's an auto driver, okay? So all four are working class people, right, who depend on different jobs during the day, right? The fisherman ventures to the sea, the tiffin worker prepares tiffin, the auto driver ventures into the roads, and of course the industrial worker works during the day, right? Now look at this. This is for the tiffin worker. Is this visible? Yeah. So look at this. At 9 o'clock in the AM, that's when she sets her machine on. The temperature she experiences is 32 degrees Celsius. That's the temperature, that ambient temperature. The heat index on the other hand is 47 degrees Celsius because the humidity is slightly high. So combination of heat and this thing is. Now, okay, at 9 o'clock heat index slightly comes down. At 9:30 temperature mildly goes up. Heat index also is still high. 11:30, look at this. The heat she is experiencing is 48 degrees Celsius. This is ambient heat because of the exposure to the sun, and also the heat because she is working in that environment, cooking environment. So the heat she is experiencing is 48 degrees Celsius. And compounded by the humidity, the actual heat index she is facing is 69 degrees Celsius. Can you imagine? 69. But of course, on that day, on June 9th, we experienced rains at 3 in the evening. So the temperatures fell down. And thankfully, because of that, the heat index also started coming down. But look at our data for the 24 hours, okay? So, at 9 o'clock, the heat index is close to 42 degrees. But at around 11:30, that's when it peaks, 69 degrees Celsius. She experiences a peak of 100 degrees Celsius, but then we realized that it was a mistake. She placed that machine next to the stove itself, so it gave the wrong reading. Right? So this reading we have to ignore. But this is actual reading. And then a peak till the afternoon, till the rain falls, almost she is experiencing very high heat stress. And the rain comes in at 3 o'clock, and suddenly the temperatures fall and she is experiencing better temperatures. But again, in the evenings also, she is still experiencing close to 40 degrees Celsius in the morning as well. Okay. Now, people from Chennai, what's your name, ma'am? Soundarya. Soundarya will know that we are lucky creatures in Chennai. Because although we live in very hot temperatures, we luckily live close to the beach. So every evening at around 4 o'clock, correct, you see the sea breeze coming in, right? And the sea, thankfully, because of the sea breeze, we have some respite. But because many buildings have been constructed on the seashore, on the seafront, right? Some of this air has not really ventured into the city. Especially people living in the inner parts of the city, they can't really get the benefit of the sea breeze, right? And Satya is one of those people, right? She lives in the inner city, also in a slum area, which is buffeted by big buildings, so air doesn't really percolate to the place where she is, and therefore her ambient temperature is very high, and therefore she experiences close to 40-45 degrees of heat stress. Look at this. This is a photo of her working environment. This is this asbestos sheet that on the top of her working establishment. This is where she cooks, and look at this white thing here. That is our device, right? This black thing is a switch. This perforations you see, 3 dots, that's a heat sensor, right? So this is something we devised. We got in Harvard. I used Gen AI to tell me what to do, and I came up with this concept. Then I reached out to a hardware engineer. He assembled it for us, and we got 5 devices. Okay. So while doing this story, of course, we did not limit ourselves only with data, and so we also wanted to understand her livelihood, right? So we asked her what issues she goes through because of heat stress. So one thing Satya told us was, and luckily we deployed a woman reporter. So because of the sensitivities, she told her colleague Nitika that apart from heat, she faces other issues like urinary tract infection, because there is virtually no public toilet facility available nearby, and so she has to use a toilet facility somewhere for which is not properly maintained, lack of water, and severe heat source. These are the problems she undergoes. So we covered all that in our explanation here, right? That's with respect to Satya the cook. Now the fisherman. Similar thing, in the morning, not much temperature, just 34 degrees. Heat index is 43.2. But over the day, temperature increases dramatically. He experiences 1 p.m. 48 degrees Celsius, a heat index of 69 degrees Celsius. That's because he takes a boat right during noon into the sea, open sea, right? I asked him, why do you do that? I'm not me, my reporter, my colleague asked him, why do you have to go in this peak heat conditions? So I'm not a fisher person, so I don't know, but he told me that during the peak heat time, that's when the fishes come closer to the surface of the water. So it is easy to catch the fish then. So for livelihood purposes, this person risks the heavy heat exposure and still goes into the ocean and picks up fishes, right? And look at that, because he's directly without any, you're in the open sea, there is no shelter, and on a wooden boat, the elements of nature are most harsh, right? That's why he experiences 69 degrees Celsius as heat index and a direct, heat ambient temperature of 48 degrees Celsius. Right. But in the evenings, thankfully, one because of the breeze and two because of the rains, thankfully he has some relief. The temperatures fall down, the heat index also falls down dramatically. But in the evenings again, after the rains are over, the heat starts going up slowly. Right. Now, look at this graph. So our friend forgot to switch the machine off after 6 p.m. So we had data only till 6 p.m. But this is the entire period when he's in the sea, right? This period, 11 o'clock to close to 2 o'clock. This is when it's the sea. And look at the exposure he has. Heavy heat exposure, right? But thankfully, because of the rains, it falls down. And in the evenings, it starts getting better. But even he is experiencing around 40 to 41 degrees of heat stress. Now, this person who we interviewed lives in a place called Nochikuppam, right? That's right next to the sea, right? And unlike Satya, who is inside the city, he lives next to the sea. So why is he experiencing this high temperature? So we asked him. So he told us, he took us to his home and showed that even though he lives next to the sea, again a building has come up and his house is behind the building. So there is no percolation of air, even though he is living close to the ocean. Okay, and we noticed that fisher people who are living in those slums, they were living there but sleeping on the beach. So Chennai, if you go to Marina Beach in the evenings and after the Marina Beach, you will notice a lot of people in the evenings at around 9 p.m. taking their beds and going and sleeping on the beach. But this fellow didn't do it. So I asked him why. So he said, I have a young child, and there is a chance of the child being kidnapped. So you do a story on heat, but you get other information, right? So we noticed that the place he stayed had a lot of CCTV cameras. I was surprised, in a fisherman slum area, why are there so many CCTV cameras? So I asked him, and he said, sir, this area is also a major drug trafficking area. So a lot of smugglers live here, they traffic on drugs, and therefore the police has started to question a lot of people, even the innocents are questioned. That's why there is so much surveillance over here. So again, I'm digressing, but the point is, when a journalist ventures out to do a story, many stories start coming in, side stories start coming in. So that's what I wanted to tell you. If you notice the kind of net he uses, this nets also, with very high temperatures, start to fray. So one of his demands or requests was that the government subsidizes the buying of nets for fishermen during summer, right? Then the industrial worker, similar story. I'll just rush through, okay? Similar story. He also experiences very high heat stress because he's actually manufacturing these utensils. Look at this establishment. He's actually polishing and heating this pot to make it. So obviously the establishment is very congested, very little ventilation, high heat stress and so on. And that is revealed in the data. He experiences heat index close to 66 degrees Celsius. And largely during the afternoons. And Prakash, his heat exposure is almost very high for the rest of the day and the night also. That's because he lives in one of the most innermost parts of the city, an area which is far away from the beach, right? And with very little ventilation, congested area, and that's why his heat exposure is very high. Okay? Look at the kind of environment they work in. And then our auto driver, similar story. Just rush across. Okay. See, this fellow also does most of his commuting during the day. That's when he gets more money. Office hours, people going to office. That's the time he gets his more money. And he also experiences a very high this thing. You see this missing data? Our friend, when rain fell, he thought the device will get damaged, so he switched it off for 3 hours. So again, he also had, high heat exposure. So this is the story of 4 different people of the working class and their heat exposure. Something is missing here. Can someone tell me what is missing? If you are doing a story like this, you need to do it full hog, right? Here I have chosen just working class person. What did I miss? Anyone? Don't feel shy, please. How could I have said this as a better story? Comparison, exactly. With whom? Exactly. Well, what's your name, sir? Niranjan. Yeah, thank you. Niranjan is absolutely right. The story would have been complete if we had compared it with a person who has access to AC, lives a more sedentary lifestyle, works in an environment which is, protected from the harsh environment, right? Actually, we had one person like that, okay? And what we did was, before we did the story, we went to each of these people and told them how to operate it. Just switch it on, leave it as it is. We gave them a charger just in case if you want to charge it, you can. Everything was done. So I thought that the working class people will find it difficult, but they did it perfectly. We had a middle class person also, and public relations professional. She, instead of putting the machine on, she switched it off. So we didn't get the data. So that's why we couldn't present it. I didn't want to put some dummy data. But I had dummy data from my own. I had a 6 machine at my own where I worked, and I barely had any exposure beyond 30 degrees Celsius. So because I was sitting in the AC all along, so I was completely protected from the ravages of the sea. The good thing is that after we did this story, Tamil Nadu has a state planning commission. Kerala also has it. In the state planning commission, they were already working on heat mitigation plans, right? So when they saw this story, they came to us and asked us how we did this. And they told us that we are already working on declaring heat as a disaster, right? And this kind of studies are useful for them. So they use this to update their, disaster management plan. And they looked for a class-based approach to mitigate this, right? And to come up with suggestions. Interestingly, the Tamil Nadu Corporation also reached out, right? So, Chennai Corporation. Chennai Corporation also reached out. So in the Chennai Corporation, some consultants had prepared, what is called, resting areas in, or wet parks, right? So the corporation had built some wet parks around Chennai. But these parks were open only from 8 in the morning to 11 in the morning, and then 4 in the evening to 8 in the evening, okay? They were closing the parks from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. The reason was because they said that many vagrants were coming and lying down in the park, which they did not want. So what they did was, they took our device and they said we can't publish our data because it is this is only in our only for internal consumption. So they took our device and placed it in different zones of the park, and showed where there is wet areas, the heat exposure is very less, and they finally changed their policy from closing the park in the afternoon to opening the parks during the afternoon, so that the working class people can benefit from the shade. Okay. So a story like this can have several benefits. One, it can inform our readers. Two, it can inform policy. And if there is a responsive government, it can also result in mitigating steps, right? But what I want you to understand from the story is the method. So we went to this hypothesis that heat in a city affects different people differently, even though they are in the same city. And just like a science experiment, we created a devices, presented it to different people, found the data, interpreted the data, showed the data, and came up with suggestions and normative actions, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. This is almost like a science project, right? How many of you are from science backgrounds here? All of you are social. Yeah, you're from science background. Okay, even social sciences, economists. Like, how many of you do behavioral economists here? Yeah, sir knows better. So all of this information is basically testing out your hypothesis on, a specific respondents. It's as similar to that. So journalism is not merely writing stories by asking people or telling what the government says. It also comes up with. It's also about hypothesis, generating questions, finding answers, and justifying those conclusions using data, right? So that's why I wanted to tell this story. Any questions on this? We have a lot of time, so we'll go slow, and I want this to be participative. So any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll move on. Sure? Okay. Okay, so quickly, how we did do the story? We had an Arduino device where we had this DH22 is this temperature sensor. This temperature sensor basically captured the temperature at every 10 seconds, and the data was stored in an SD card. Okay, this is the SD card, and this SD card was attached to those devices. So we used that data and then interpreted it by putting the data in spreadsheets, and the story you saw flow like with interactive graphics was there, right? That was using JavaScript, and of course we used for the visualization, for the graphics and so on, Adobe and Flourish. Okay, so it was basically a team of 6 journalists who did this. One journalist, I conceptualized the story, got the hardware, got the machines. One journalist went to each of the respondents, sat with them, understood why they felt what they felt. One journalist put it together into a story. One journalist visualized it, added data, and presented a story, and one journalist actually added the elements to it. That's how we did the story. Okay, now that you got an overview of what kind of stories can be told, the question now is, why do we need to do the stories, and why is it imperative for journalists to do that? So how many of you are from media studies? One? Yeah. How is it that media studies, everything is from Chennai anyway? Okay. So there is an imperative reason why we are doing such stories, right? And journalism has now started to change from what it was before. Can someone tell me what is the meaning of newspaper of record? Except for you. Newspaper of record. Okay, make a guess. What does it mean? Newspaper of record. How many of you are newspaper readers? No one? Few of you, yeah. So what could it mean? Yeah, tell me. Yeah. Make a guess, please. Yeah. Come up with your hypothesis. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, as simple as that. Something that is written and recorded, but something more to it. Okay. When you say newspaper of record, the term is used because prior to newspapers, or at a time when there was no social media, right, we used to get all our information from the newspapers, right? So unless it is recorded in the newspaper, you won't believe that it is true or false, right? A friend from Chennai will know, there used to be, or probably your parents would have told you, used to be a point of time when in the 80s, 70s and 80s, that someone was confirmed to be dead only after the obituary was published in the Hindu. It was like that, right? So newspapers, at one point of time, all they used to do was, government said this. How many of you seen Doordarshan news in the 80s? You were not born, right? So yeah, so sir must have, like our generation, we grew up in the 80s. So news during that time was 30 minutes, when an anchor will be there and say, today Home Minister said good morning, Prime Minister said good evening, they went to this spot, they went to that spot, they greeted the Nepal Prime Minister, then one visual will be there, right? So journalism at one point of time used to be that only, press releases, right? Government said this, this happened, that happened, an airline disaster happened, and it was simply reporting the news as it is, right? Because the idea was to present news as it is, right? No opinion, no analysis. That's for others to do. Let the social scientists, you guys do the analysis. Journalists will only present the news. And newspaper of record meant that your job was to present whatever news is available, right? The Hindu, on the other hand, divided its offerings differently. We had the news section, we had the opinion section. And so we still follow that policy that news, report it as it is. Opinion is where whatever you can say, right? So Home Minister Amit Shah said this. Home Minister Amit Shah said this and said it falsely. Let's say only in the opinion section. You cannot say that in the news sections. No adjectivization, no normative, nothing. Just present the facts as it is, right? And let the facts speak for themselves. So newspaper of record used to be a time when, the idea of a newspaper record used to be a time when news was presented as it is, and all the journalists had to do was report the news and go to bed, right? But things have started changing now, right? So for that, I want you to look at our current milieu. How many of you consume your, now please participate. How many of you consume your news from only newspapers? Nobody, good. How many of you consume news primarily from television? 1, 2, okay. How many of you consume your news from social media, that is Instagram, wow, Twitter, yeah, Facebook, yeah, okay. So that's fine. That's how the nature of the beast has become. News is now coming directly to your fingertips, right? So why do you have to go to, okay, how many of you read e-papers of the news? Okay, yeah, so some of you do read newspaper, e-papers, right? So the nature of the beast has changed, right? Also, nature of journalism has changed. So people like me were used to be, we are the term we use to describe us are media persons. Can someone tell me what is the meaning of media? Medium, right? So like a via media. So I am like someone in the middle of the consumer and the happenings. So I present the information to you, and therefore I am like the middleman, right? But now there is no middleman. Anyone can be a journalist. So our friend who is now taking a screenshot of this can now put this up on Instagram, and she can be a journalist saying, this old gentleman from Chennai coming and saying crap. That will be reporting, right? So anyone can be a journalist, right? But when I said that, this old gentleman coming and saying crap, right? How is it said? It is said without any filter, right? There is no one to verify whether what I have said is right. So social media, it has democratized information. Information can now come from anywhere, right? Anyone can be a journalist. Any citizen can be a journalist. But that information comes without any gatekeeping, right? For example, I am driving on the road, right? And someone is slapping someone, okay? I can take a photo of it immediately and immediately put it up and saying, violence on the streets of Kasaragod, right? Look at how law and order has fallen or something like that. But there could be some context to it. Maybe the person who was slapping the other person was doing it in a pique or anger because the other person was doing something wrong, right? The other person probably did something violent and this person was reacting. So unless you give context, what you see is just information without any verification or any context setting, right? So social media, while it has democratized things, it has also brought in, an element of lack of context, lack of gatekeeping and so on. So there was this report by, there is a yearly report by Reuters. You know what is Reuters, right? News agency. They have this what is called a digital media report. Just like I asked you, they asked us, a sample size of around 10,000 people, how do they consume their news? And they found that news consumption was largely almost 60 to 70% through social media. But when they asked how much trust factor do you have for social media, then almost 70% of the people say they distrust it, right? Yet they read it, okay? But the trust factor for print media, okay, it was close to highest, but nobody read us, right? Or rather, very few people read us. So there is this paradox, right? So, as I said, there are the problems of social media, unfiltered news, lack of context. And of course, there is this problem of fake news, right? And can someone tell me the difference between misinformation and disinformation? Good, good. Misinformation is coming up with false news. Disinformation is deliberately putting up false news, right? In order to mislead, right? Okay. So there is this problem of misinformation and disinformation also coming through social media, right? Yeah, and also user preferences. People now get everything on the smartphone. Why do you have to really open a paper and read? And people are not only not reading. My son, who is 17, he's not only not reading newspapers. He's not only reading. He's only watching. He gets his, news fix from videos. I was asking him about the Iran conflict, and he seemed quite informed. So I said, "What did you watch?" There is this guy who comes on YouTube, some American, I don't know who he is. So he saw that video. Then I asked him, "What do you think America is doing, etc., etc." And he seemed to be well informed again. So I said, "I watched Young Turks." So I was shocked that they are getting information, but they are getting information from video, right? From Instagram Reels, from YouTube Shorts. So the nature of better, sir? Yeah. So the nature of news consumption has not only changed in terms of what you read and how you read, but whether you read at all, right? So we are in a very challenging situation, right? Journalism is today in a big challenge. How do we reach out to people? Right? Then there's new problem like news avoidance, right? Some people tell us, newspaper people always negative, right? How many of you seen that movie? What is that Hindi film? Zindagi Milega Dobara? No, something. No, not that. They go on a ship. What is that movie? Dil Dhadakne Do. Yeah. So there's this scene. This journalist, I think Farhan Akhtar is his journalist, and the complaint against him, "Aap hamesha negative kyun publish? Why do you always publish negative things? Why don't you make positive news?" So this is something I hear all the time. So I am covering the Iraq war, I am covering Iran war, I am covering COVID. Then my relatives tell me, very negative. So people actually started to avoid news because there's too much of it, right? So there is that problem also. So what it has created for us is, one, a risk that we are losing readers, losing viewers, but it also gives us opportunity. And what opportunity does it provide? If I present this information with context, right? We know Chennai is hot, but we bring context that even if it is hot during the hotter seasons, it affects people differently. Bring context. Then that will mean, impacting policy. And therefore readers would want to know, oh, okay, I want to understand this better. So there will always be, India is the most populous country in the world now, there will always be readers who would want to understand things better. Like all of you are studying social sciences. Someone will tell you, why social sciences? All of you should study engineering. This is the time to, make money, build products. But why are you studying social sciences? There's a value to it, right? Similarly, there is a value to news. And that value will be reaped when there are citizens wanting to understand things better. And if they want to understand things better, then I have to provide information and context to make them understand things better. And that's why providing context is very important. And of course, I have to organize this better and inform citizens better. So that's our current milieu. Where does data journalism fit in all this, right? Previously, by data journalism, can I have some water? Previously, okay, I'll give you an example. In 2015, okay, when I started in the Hindu 11 years ago, I was given this almost like a free-for-all role. My editor said, Srini, go and intervene everywhere. Wherever you want to make a change, go and do it. Full freedom, autonomy, do it. I said, fine. So initially I started as edit pages editor, but my editor thought that, okay, this fellow, he knows more than just edit page. He can play with numbers. So go and do whatever you want. So one day she told me, go to Delhi and work there for 10 days. So I went to Delhi. So there was this story, right? The story was Vasundhara Raje Scindia. Who is Vasundhara Raje Scindia? Can someone tell me? Former Rajasthan Chief Minister, right? When she was the Chief Minister, she came up with this policy that if you have to contest panchayat elections, you should be 5th pass or 4th pass. Forgive me, I don't remember the exact details, but there was a criteria. You have to pass at least the 4th standard. You should be 4th pass or 5th pass, something like that. Unless you did that, you are not eligible for contesting panchayat elections, right? And someone tell me, what is panchayat elections? You know all that, right? Local democracy, right? So what I did was, I asked my colleague Rukmini, who was then a data journalist, this was a story and we were taking it on page 1. I said, just presenting this is not enough. Let us add some numbers to it. So I told her, can you look into census information and find out in Rajasthan, among all people, what is the percentage of people who have passed, primary school? 5th standard is primary school, right? Find out for us. And tell me the same percentages for Dalits and tribals, SCs and STs, right? So she got that information out and she found out close to 40 to 45% of adults who were literate had not done more than primary education among Dalits and tribals. So what does that mean? If you put a criteria like this, almost 40% of eligible people who could otherwise contest elections cannot contest. So what did we do? We put a simple pie chart. This is the whole universe of eligible, people who can stand elections. 40% is not eligible. So simple 2 pie chart and then another pie chart for SCs and another pie chart for SCs. So 3 circles. So I got it done. Everything is ready. Page is about to be passed. I have a 30-minute deadline. So my resident editor, every edition has a resident editor. He's about to clear the pages. He came running to me. What have you done? I said, what have I done, sir? What is this circles? 3 circles. Why? Nobody will read this. I said, boss, I have explained those circles. These are pie charts. What pie chart? We don't do such things on page 1, man. This is not how we have worked. Don't bring all these things on the first page itself. People will be put off. I said, no, sir, I'm 100% sure they won't be put off. They will understand this better. No, don't do this. But I had to put my foot down. I said, boss, the editor has told me to intervene. Full freedom. So, sorry. If you have a problem, please talk to the editor. And he grudgingly said, bloody Chennai people. Anyway, finally, they put the graphic on. This is 2015. 4 years later, 2019, I go to Delhi again for some work, right? So I was working on something. The same person comes running to me at 6 in the evening, right? And says, Acha Srini, you're here now. Yeah. Yaar, ek help karna. Can you do me a favor? Yeah. Yaar, page 1 ke liye graphic banana. I think it will be good. So I said, which graphic? अरे यार वो तुम करते हो ना वो पाई चार्ट स्कैटर प्लॉट वो कर दो उसके लिए. मैं बोला सर किसके लिए? अरे वो लोग पढ़ते हैं वो चीज़. Sorry, his basic thing was, people are reading these things, the same person, okay, the very same person. See, that's his own evolution, right? So I am actually appreciating that person. So he has realized that people do read such things. It's not as if we are just a developing country, not much newspaper readers. No, we have people who want to be informed better, right? So if you present the same information instead of a textual story into a visual graph, then more people will read you, more people will understand you, right? So yeah, so visualized data stories have greater appeal than just text. Other thing is, when you say something with numbers, right, it has an objectivity to it, right? So when I say a fisherman, heat impacts fishermen more than anyone else, I must say, how do you know? I don't believe you. I have data to show that on June 9th at 12 p.m. Exactly on noon, the fisherman experiences 69 degrees Celsius while The working class person who is in works under asbestos gets 56 degrees Celsius. So the fisherman is exposed to more heat. So when I say those numbers, right, automatically you are saying, oh, numbers, fine. Okay. Okay, you can mix and match numbers and say things differently. That's another. They say lies, statistics, and whatever. But when you say something with value to it, you add objectivity to it. One. Next, you also have a certain degree of verifiability, right? So if I say, for example, 40% of Dalits in Rajasthan won't be able to contest elections because they have not cleared class 5, and because this information is available from census, what am I telling you? I'm not telling you to trust me. I'm giving you the sources also. You go and check it out. Many a time, readers have asked for our sources, checked it and said, you have interpreted it wrongly. This is not how you interpret it. This is the fuller context. So there is a level of verifiability in data journalism. When you add numbers and give sources and tell information, there is verifiability. That is missing if you just say using plain text. Right? So what did we say? Trust was a problem in journalism. Now you are addressing trust by adding verifiability to it. Right? Verifiability, peer. So when you have objectivity and verifiability, you obviously make it credible. Right? So when there is credibility, then more people come and read us. So this is a credible. Something happens. Oh, I want to know how many people in Kerala how many migrants from Kerala will be affected due to the Iran war. Okay. So how do you do it? You can find out how many. First of all, still Kerala is highest when it comes to migrants. If you don't have the actual numbers, you can look at remittance numbers. So you know what is a remittance? Can someone tell me what is the meaning of remittance? Exactly, money sent by NRIs. So if someone is working in the Gulf and sending money over, if you look at which cross section of you have data based on the banks and so on, so you can find out if Kerala gets more remittance money, that means more people are from Kerala, right? A proxy, right? So automatically you can verify and you can also, there is an objectivity to it, and therefore it builds credibility, and then people want to come and to the Hindu or other sources because they are providing this information again. Getting what I'm saying? So data journalism, in my opinion, gives a value added journalism that enables journalists or enables media houses to get more sticky readers. Readers and viewers will come and view us again and again. Like for example, television channels get some of their best readership or viewership. Can someone tell me when? Exactly. During elections, right? Why? Because in the present numbers, right? Other thing, even sports, right? When you watch sports, you have the scorecard always there, right? So you are not watching the action, you are also measuring the action every point of time. So anything said with numbers enhances interest and verifiability and credibility, right? Then of course, if I have to tell a story with graphs, a picture can say, what is that? Can someone tell me the proverb? A picture can say what 1,000 words can say, right? A graphic will say what 10,000 words can say, right? So a graphic is even more appealing and easy to explain things than just plain text. So especially for newspapers, who are always constrained for resources and for whom newsprint, the paper, is very costly, conserving space is important, right? And of course, more informed audience. I'll move on. Any questions? I'll move on. Yeah. Okay, now to the main part. Why all of you are here, right? And why I probably have been brought here, right? So as I told you, when I tell a story, right, it's like doing a science project or a social science thesis, right? It's exactly the same method. So how do I tell a story? I'll use this. So the method is very similar. I come up with a hypothesis, right? Test it, analyze the findings, tell the story, and basically present the narrative, right? Now if the hypothesis is wrong after testing it, then I come up with a fresh hypothesis. Okay? Again test it, analyze the findings, present it. Okay? Some problem with the visual. Forgive me, I used nano banana for this. Anyway. So this is the scientific method process, right? So this is almost how you do a science project or a social science project. Not very different. Correct? Correct? Okay. At the same time, when I present this information, I can't just take some data randomly and for the sake of using data, presenting numbers, show something. No. It has to have a narrative and set a context. Okay? And ideally, if the narrative has comparative purposes and meaning, then it makes a good data story. Right? Okay? So this is what these two slides are talking about. Do you want me to explain more? Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, so there was this story we did, like there was this, okay, in 2024 Lok Sabha elections, right? The turnout in some states was much low compared to other states, okay? And one reason Election Commission offered was that these states are going through heat waves. The temperature in those states is very high. That's why people are not voting, right? Now, how do you test that? Can someone tell me how to test it? Huh? I didn't understand. Come again? No. But I have to devise how many people I have to do for each state, right? Okay. Correct. You can just look at normal temperature. That itself is fine. But just taking temperature will be enough? No, right? So, for example, in Kerala, average degree is 34 degrees Celsius. Rajasthan is 36 degrees Celsius. Madhya Pradesh is 37 degrees Celsius. Gujarat is 31 degrees Celsius. But more people are voting in Madhya Pradesh than in Gujarat. Then that reverses, right? So, again, will that be enough? No, because each state has its own patterns. Kerala always has higher number of voters irrespective. So I can't just do simple state versus state comparison, right? So how do I do it? I have to compare within states, correct? So in Kerala in 2014, 2019, what was the vote turnout? And 2024, what was the turnout? In 2014, what was the temperature, average temperature? 2019, what was the average temperature? 2024, what is the average temperature? Correct? I just do the differences. So let's say in 2019 average temperature was 34 degrees. 2024 average temperature is 35 degrees. So the increase is 1 degree, right? If by increasing by 1 degree my turnout falls, right, by say 2 percentage points, then I'll say there is a relation, correct? Similarly, I do it for other states also, right? I did this exercise and I found, very oddly, in some places temperature went up, turnout also went up. Some places temperature fell very much, turnout also fell very much. No correlation. So clearly voting is not a function of temperature or heat. There are other reasons for it. Then we delved further. We found that Gujarat and Kerala, Gujarat and MP had low turnout because they felt BJP is coming to power in any way. So very few people who are opposition people voted in Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh. On the other hand, Rajasthan, which had high temperatures, the contest was more. Okay, so people voted for more people voted. So it was not temperature that determined voting patterns, but the political variables inside it that determined voting patterns. So come up with the hypothesis, test it, analyze the findings, and tell the story, and always use it for comparative purposes and have some meaning to the numbers. Don't just randomly come up with, okay, getting what I'm saying? Okay? So someone can say simply that Madhya Pradesh has more temperature than Kerala, therefore Madhya Pradesh is voting less. But that is bad context. The numbers might say that, but the context is bad. Correct? Okay? Getting what I'm saying? Right. Next, when you tell a story using data journalism or anything using data, it can't just simply be a number story. You go and try to find a story based on news interest or public interest. When I'm doing a story on heat, it's not just to say this number. No. The idea is basically for public interest. What should governments do to mitigate heat problems, right? And then use data to show it, not the other way around. The story cannot be subordinated to data. Data has to be subordinated to journalism, old school journalism. And importantly, journalists can't give answers to everything. We will find the numbers, we'll present the numbers. It is for you guys to come up with answers. So I am a slave of the daily cycle. Today I have to do something, tomorrow I'll move on to something else, right? You, on the other hand, are researchers. You have the time and place to sit and analyze something. You have time. So for a journalist, our job is to provide the basis for you to pick up on and inform better. Okay? I'll move on. Okay, so now that we said what is a method, now how do you implement that method, right? Or rather, what do we do? Forgive, this is data store, not Tor, okay. So basically, what we try to do is not just present numbers, but we try to understand the real world, right? In terms of how policy decisions are taken, and then use data to show whether the policy is right or wrong, okay? Then we build context, form a narrative. And like, for example, how many of you know electoral bonds? Can someone tell me what is electoral bonds? Yeah. Correct. Very good. So basically, prior to 2024, between 2018 to 2024, there was this device available to political parties due to government law, that if suppose our friend wants to donate to party X, okay? Let's say Aam Aadmi Party, he wants to donate to Aam Aadmi Party. Where are you from, sir? He's from Kerala. He won't donate to Aam Aadmi Party still, okay? Just an example. I don't want you to donate also, don't worry. So let's say he wants to donate to Aam Aadmi Party, and he doesn't want to know that he is donating, okay? And he's a corporate, he has a company. So during that period, what one could do is, he could go to State Bank of India, right? And give, let's say, 1 lakh rupees, okay? And buy an electoral bond of denomination 1 lakh, right? State Bank will note down his name and this thing in a database and give him the bond. That bond, he will tell them verbally, please put it in Aam Aadmi Party's account, okay? So in Aam Aadmi Party's account, that 1 lakh bond will be deposited without his name. Just the bond number will be there. Now technically, only SBI could have this matching information, and they were not supposed to publish it. Because each bond had a designated number. Bond number 6463 is, what's your name? Jairaj 6463 to Aam Aadmi Party, right? Jairaj Corporation, okay? So this is how it was to function. Now what is the problem in this? Can someone tell me? Is this legal? Why was it declared illegal? The Supreme Court in 2024 said, this electoral bonds is illegal, you cannot do this. Why? Good. Why? Explain further. Yeah. Good. She's saying because there is no track of who is exactly donating, there could be black money being put into elections and so on. Good. Any other reason? The real problem is transparency, right? I as a citizen, right, have to know who is donating to whom, right? Correct? So for example, if let's say Jairaj's company, right, is under, let's say, he's experiencing a loss, okay? And the only way he can make a profit, if he can build a road from the university to the airport, okay? And he needs that contract desperately, okay? So what he can do is, and who decides whether the contract, the government decides. So suppose, let's say Aam Aadmi Party is in power here. So he wants to tell the Aam Aadmi Party, look, I am going to donate to you, please give me this thing, right? Prior to the electoral bonds, if he did that, I will come to know. As a journalist, I will say, how come this fellow got the contract? I look at the data, oh, he has made the donation. So I will write a story. Jairaj made a donation of 1 lakh rupees before getting the contract, right? So immediately he will be under question, the party will be under question, right? By eliminating, by making it anonymous, right? Nobody knows why he donated, who donated, which party got it, nothing is available. So the level of transparency is gone, correct? So the Supreme Court actually said transparency is part and parcel of the democratic process. You cannot do away with transparency. And accountability is important. That is the reason why they said electoral bonds should be scrapped. Okay? Now, suddenly because of the Supreme Court judgment, we had 6 years of worth of data, right? Of which parties donated to, which companies donated to the parties, to which party did they donate, all that information was available. Now it's a gold mine for us. Now in the last 6 years we can find out if Jayaraj has an ED case against him, did he donate after the ED case? Yes. Good, my friend, clever. Then was he going through loss? And normally you can, the law says you can donate only if you're not loss making, only if you're profit making. If he was making a loss and still donating, again, very good, my friend. Okay. The law says you have to have 3 years of, you should be incorporated for at least 3 years. But Jayaraj is forming a company 1 month before and then donating. Very good, my friend. So these are the things you can investigate, right? So essentially that's what I'm trying to say. You understand policy decisions by connecting the invisible dots. Electoral bonds is something, corruption is something. But get the data for both and see what you can connect. Okay, that is the kind of data studies you should tell. Okay, again, very similar to what social scientists do, right? How many of you are economists here? So how do you do your economics research? How do you do your economics research? What's your PhD on? The role of? Okay, the role of cooperating in enhancing agriculture credit. Sustainability. So what is your hypothesis? Right. So new cooperatives are helping farmers, right? How do you do that? How do you justify that hypothesis? Exactly. So that's exactly what we are doing here, right? So he is trying to connect the dot between farm sustainability and cooperatives. Are cooperatives lending to small farmers? New cooperatives are being formed, and are the cooperatives formed between farm organizations? Correct? These are the things he's going to look at and look for data for it. And you will do during the time period, right? What is your time period? From which year to which year? No, understood. But if you are going to study the data, you won't take data from 1800, right? Exactly. So he is taking from 2020 onwards, looking for new cooperatives and how they are helping in farm sustainability. You are going to limit the place also. You are going to do in Kerala only or only Kerala? See? So exactly, it's like journalism is the same, right? Electoral bonds, I'm looking between corruption and donations to organizations. I can't look for everything, so I'll look for between 2019 to 2024. I can't go and look into everything, so I'll only say anyone who had donated more than 200 crores. Let's study that. Some people might have donated 50,000 rupees, like Jayaraj. But why do you investigate him? Poor guy. 50,000 is nothing for companies, right? So you set the universe, check the context, set the data and find out. Just like a social science project, right? Anyone else? Someone who's doing political science here? Yeah, what's your topic on? What Buddhism? Oh. Okay. It's mostly a qualitative work, right? Yeah, but even there, some data can be used. Yeah, like how many people are converted to Buddhism in recent periods, perhaps. Like, okay, let's say if the question rises that you want to find out how many, whether there is a rise in Buddhism among Dalits, how will you do that? Where? Census, exactly. That's like the same thing, that's what we do in journalism. So she says her story is slightly qualitative. She wants to understand neo-converts to Buddhism among Dalits, correct? And especially among women, right? That's what she's trying to do. But she can also add quantitative element to it by simply looking at, let's say, unfortunately our government is, our government believes in doing, even if there aaye durust aaye, we don't mind doing census, we have to do it in the most perfect way. So like Syria, like Eritrea, like Iraq, other countries going through humongous conflict. India is one of the few countries which has not conducted census. In the decennial census, we are doing it only in 2027, even though it was supposed to be in 2021. But still, she'll have 2011 data. So 1991, 2001, 2011 data. You can look at increase in Buddhism, let's say in some states, among women. Then there is something to be, the quantitative data is leading you somewhere, correct? So exactly, that's exactly what we do in journalism. So basically we are approximating social sciences in that, except my window is smaller. I have to do 4 data stories a week. You have to do 1 thesis in 4 years. No, but again, you are doing more deep work anyway. So, but at the same time, when if I do a story on Buddhism and use data, that you can use further and develop further, right? So that's my job, okay? All right. So how do we do it? Build context. How do we? First we find data, right? Finding data, some data is easily available, right? RTI get data, or government itself publishes data in RBI, Reserve Bank of India, the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy provides data, Ministry of Statistics Planning and Implementation providing data, and so on. Election Commission is providing data. But sometimes the data is not simply provided in, say, Excel sheet or so on. Right? You know what is Excel sheets, right? CSV files and so on. You can immediately, sometimes I have to take it from the website directly. For example, suppose I want to, get the data for each constituency in Bihar, who won, how many votes they won, and so on. So that information is available in Election Commission, right? So look at this data. This is for this constituency, Aguillon, and Bharatiya Janata Party won 45.2%. They are the winner in that constituency, and these are all the candidates who fought that election, right? Now suppose I want to go for another constituency. Look at this. This is 195. That's the assembly number, right? So if here you have this 195 here. So if I want to say, let's say, I start from the first one. So just change it to 1. This is Valmiki number 1. Similarly, I want for, can you tell me anyone from Bihar here? Yeah. So how many constituencies are there in Bihar? No. Assembly. 257. Huh? Okay, let's say 250 then. Okay. 250. No, I think it's 230 or something. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Give me a 1 minute break, please.